I wanted to share it with you as we take up our offering today. As soon as the tray passes you, or as soon as you give via your phone, that kind of stuff, you can go find Ecclesiastes. So we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 is where we are today. This is the 6th week in our study, and we've got 2 messages left after this, and I am ready to be done with the book of Ecclesiastes. So I'm ready to wrap up with this. I don't think I ever say that about a series. Like, I'm usually thinking, wish we had another week or two to dig into this a little bit more. I'm ready to be done with Ecclesiastes, and it's not because it hasn't been a good study, and it's not because of the nature of the book. This is one of my favorite books. The reason I'm ready to be done with it is because the last couple of weeks, this book has gotten harder and harder to preach. Not because of the message, just because of the writing style. If you've been following in the readings the last few weeks, this book's gotten harder and harder to read. Somebody stopped me before church and said, "Hey, I read chapter 9 and 10 this week for Ecclesiastes." And I said, "Yeah, what'd you think?" They said, I don't know what he was talking about. And I said, "Well, I don't either, but I'm going to preach about it in about 10 minutes. If you read that stuff from chapter 7 on, like the first half of the book, there's a flow to it. So the first half of the book, it's kind of like he's searching for meaning or purpose in life, and he tries pleasure, and that doesn't provide it, and he tries success, and that doesn't provide it, and he tries wealth, and that doesn't provide it, and work, and that doesn't provide it, and wisdom, that doesn't provide it. And his conclusion is that's all a chasing after the wind. None of that stuff is meaningful. All of that stuff is meaningless. It's temporary. It doesn't last. And so you kind of see where he's going through the first 5 or 6 chapters, and then starting in chapter 7, he just kind of goes all over the place. He starts listing Proverbs. If you've been following in the readings from chapter 7 through chapter 12, it reads like the book of Proverbs. If you've ever sat down and tried to read the book of Proverbs in one sitting, you can't do it. It's just, or you can't even read a chapter at the time of the book of Proverbs because it's just a collection of sayings. There's no narrative. There's no story to follow. That you can't see where he's going. It's just, here's a wisdom saying, and here's a saying, and here's a saying, and here's a saying, and here's a saying, here's a saying, and they just put it all together. And that's what's going on right here in the rest of the book of Ecclesiastes. And it makes it hard to preach because I want to say, here's what he says in chapter 10, but he says this in chapter 10, and this, and this, and this, and that. He says all kinds of stuff in chapter 10. He says all kinds of stuff in chapter 9. He says, it's just goes all over the place. So what we're going to do is I'm going to focus in. We're going to look at the second half of chapter 9 this morning and all of chapter 10, but not all of it. We're going to look at just a small portion of it. And I've tried to hone in on the one theme I see in this passage right here. And it's about wisdom. And this is a book that it comes out of wisdom literature. So this is wisdom literature in the Old Testament. And he's talking in this very limited section about why wisdom is better than folly. And that doesn't sound very exciting. And that's not a very exciting sermon title. So I didn't go with it. I got a better sermon title. I'll tell you in just a minute. But wisdom is better than folly. And what he does is he tells one story to illustrate that, and then he shares 5 proverbs. And so we're going to read it, and then we'll unpack it a little bit here, okay? So let's start in verse 13. Chapter 9, verse 13. All right. I also saw under the sun this example of wisdom that greatly impressed me. There was once a small city with only a few people in it, and a powerful king came against it, surrounded it. I didn't know Scott was going to read 1st, 2nd Kings right there. Surrounded it and built huge sage works against it. Now, there lived in that city a man who was poor but wise, and he saved the city by his wisdom. Now, the reason he illustrates that he was poor was he's trying to show that he didn't save his city by his financial resources. He didn't save the city by his military might. He saved the city through his wisdom. We don't know exactly what he did, but he saved the city through his wisdom. But now, Solomon can't help but be a little negative about it. So the next verse he says, "So I said, wisdom is better than strength." That's a positive. Wisdom is better than strength. The pen is mightier than the sword. But the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are no longer heeded. Then 5 proverbs. The quiet words of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouts of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. As dead flies give perfume a bad smell, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. The heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left. Even as fools walk along the road, they lack sense and show everyone how stupid they are. I don't know if the last one's a proverb or not. That's just maybe a statement. I don't know. But what's he talking about? What is the meaning of the story? And what are the meaning of the Proverbs? And how does any of that relate to the lives that we're trying to live today? Well, I'm going to give you a summary. I'm going to give you a simple, like 4 or 5 word summary of this entire section. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to let the theologian who gave me the idea speak it to you himself. So watch this video.
Are you stupid or something?
Mama says stupid as stupid does.
Are you crazy or just plain stupid?
Stupid as stupid does, Mrs. Blue.
I guess.
Are you stupid or something?
Stupid as stupid does, sir.
All right, so this is what Solomon's trying to tell us right here. Stupid is as stupid does, okay? The whole point of this section is don't be stupid. That's the whole, in some ways, that's the whole point of the entire book. You think about it. What he said, I mean, he's kind of saying, don't be stupid and try to find meaning through pleasure, because that's meaningless. Don't be stupid and try to find purpose in your life by how much you can accumulate. That's stupid. Don't be stupid and try to find, happiness through your work. That's the whole point of the book. I mean, basically, the whole theme so far is just don't be stupid. I mean, how many times have you told your kids that, especially if you got, older kids? Don't be stupid. That's my number one rule. Just don't, when I was in youth ministry, I used to give students all these rules. Like I had a list of like 20 rules, and we go on retreat, and I'd have them, you got to sign this document, and here's all the rules and all that kind of stuff. And so when Todd was hired, 10 years ago or something, I was like, what are your rules? He said, I just sit down before the beginning of the retreat and say, don't do anything stupid. All right? Good. We're covered. And that's what we say. And I know I'm saying the S word. I get that. I know there's a couple of little kids in here that I may be getting in trouble. You're going to have to go back home and say, don't say what the preacher says from the sermon. You can't say that. He can say that in church, but we can't say that at home. Because this happened last night. We went to Mount Pleasant Grill with Mom and Dad and Amanda, and we were driving back. So I was in the car with my sister, and we had all the kids with us. And Tripp yells out, Mom, Roman said a bad word. Roman said a bad word. Okay, what is it? He said the S word. He said stupid. Okay, good. You can say that S word all you want, son. Just don't graduate to the next one. At least, But, so we're going to say stupid a lot in this message, just forewarning you. And you can clean that up at home when you get home. But that's basically what he's saying here. Don't be stupid. And he tells a story to kind of illustrate that, and he shares some proverbs to illustrate it. But we try to illustrate this each and every Sunday in our children's ministry. We have 3 core values in our children's ministry. When they in there with the elementary students right now, we're wanting them to come away. If they've been in there from like kindergarten through 3rd grade, here's what we want them to learn. Number 1, I can trust God no matter what. Number 2, I need to treat people in the way that I want to be treated. And number 3, don't do anything stupid. Now, we don't put it that way. We put it this way. Hold on. That's the way we put it. But that's the positive way of saying don't do anything stupid. I need to make the wise choice. So what we're trying to teach our kids in our children's ministry is how to make wise choices. And the language is intentional. The language, when we look at Ecclesiastes, the language is intentional. When we hear the word wisdom or wise, we tend to think smarts. That's not what it's talking about in the Bible. Like if I was to say so-and-so is a wise person, or this is a wise person, what we tend to think is, well, that's a smart person. We think they've got a high IQ. We think they're knowledgeable. We think they're intelligent. We think they're educated in some sense. When the Bible talks about wisdom, biblical wisdom doesn't have anything to do with smarts. When the writer of Ecclesiastes talks about wisdom, he's not talking about their intelligence or their IQ. It has nothing to do with that. He's talking about making right decisions, not making smart decisions, making right decisions. And you say, isn't that one and the same? No, it's not. Now, when we're trying to teach our kids, I need to make the wise choice. And what we're saying is, we need to make the right choice. or the godly choice, if you will. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What does that mean? It means that respect for God and His principles is the beginning of making right choices. That's how we make right choices, is by going to God's Word. So we're trying to teach them not to make the smart choice, not to make the most comfortable choice, not to make the most profitable choice, not to make the safest choice, but to make the right choice. The smart choice may be to cheat on the test. That may be the smart thing. You may get a better grade cheating on the test than you would have got if you didn't cheat on the test. That may be the smart thing to do, but that's not the right thing to do. The smart choice may be lying to your parents. That may keep you out of trouble. See what I mean? That may be the smart thing to do, but that's not the right thing to do. And so we're trying to teach our kids how to make the right choice. And how do you make right choices? Well, Proverbs 9 and 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Ecclesiastes 12 and somewhere down at the very last verse of it, fear the Lord and keep His commands. That's how you make right choices. You make right choices by respecting God and who He is, and then following His principles rather than our principles. Now, here's the way our student ministry does it. And this kind of goes all the way through. So we start this very early with our children, and all the way through until they graduate 12th grade, we're hammering on this, make wise choices, make wise choices, make wise choices. In our student ministry, we follow, and this bunch on this slide, so don't try to read it all. There's 7 checkpoints that we follow with our student ministry. 7 values that we're trying to hit with our students. Authentic faith, spiritual discipline, moral boundaries, healthy friendships. Look at that one on the bottom left side, on the far left corner there. Wise choices. And here's what it says. Students will learn to use godly wisdom rather than emotions in their decision making. Students will learn to use godly wisdom rather than emotions in their decision making. Now, I'm guessing there's a bunch of adults in this room right now that could use the same advice, right? There's a bunch of us to say, rather than doing what feels right or doing what feels good, I need to do what God calls me to do. I got to follow godly wisdom in this decision. So whenever, the way we try to teach this is you're always asking the question, is this the wise choice? Because is this the wise choice? Is it the right choice? Not does it feel like it's right, but is it right? And you think about how many decisions we have made in our lives. You think about how many stupid decisions we have made in our lives. And it was based on an emotional response at the time rather than on godly wisdom or godly principles. In other words, we made a decision out of anger, or we made a decision out of hurt. Somebody hurt us, and so we hurt them back. We said something out of hurt. We made a decision out of desire. We made a decision out of passion. Whatever. I mean, think about the number of decisions. If you'll think back right now, just do you a quick moral inventory right now. I want you to think back to something stupid you did. Last night, 2 nights ago, a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever. I mean, if you'll think back and we think about some stupid decision you made. It was dumb, it was foolish, it was not wise in any sense of the word, but you did it. And if you'll think about why we made that decision, it's not usually because we were carefully weighing God's wisdom and trying to determine what was the right thing to do. It's because we reacted out of emotion. If you had stopped us in the middle of making that decision and said, now wait a minute, Russ, do you think this is the wise decision? We would have said no. You said, do you think this is the right decision? We would have said no. If we were thinking rationally, we would say no, it's not the godly decision. We didn't make it because we believed it was the right decision. We made it because it felt like the right decision at the time. And our emotions can deceive us. Our emotions can lead us into some directions that are not healthy. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Our emotions are deceptive. So we've got to have a higher standard than just what feels good to us or what feels right to us. We've got to have some higher standard. There's got to be some principles here that we base our decisions on outside of our emotions, because I'm not the best judge of character. I'm not the best judge of the decisions that I've got to make. When I got to go to the right or the left, and I got to choose between A and B, or yes and no, I'm not always the best person to make that decision. That's why I need God's Word to give me some kind of standard. So we use godly wisdom rather than emotion in our decision making. And you think about, let me go back to that bad decision for just one more time. You think about that bad decision, what did it cost you? You think about that. And I know that there's some people that have paid some pretty heavy prices for a bad decision, for a stupid decision. You're like, well, it cost me my marriage, or it almost cost me my marriage, or it cost me my job, or it almost cost me my job, or it cost me a relationship with a really good friend of mine, or it almost cost me a relationship with I mean, I hope you can say almost at the end of that. Some of you can, some of you can't. You know, some of us say, no, I made a stupid decision and it cost me a relationship. It cost me a job. It cost me my freedom. It cost me my physical health, or it cost me my mental health or my emotional health. It cost me my reputation. It was just one bad decision. It was a stupid decision. I wasn't thinking at the time. I just did it, and it cost. I mean, the proverb, look at Ecclesiastes 10:1 here. As dead flies give perfume a bad smell, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. A little folly. It only takes one dead fly in the perfume to make the perfume not worth much. And you say, well, it's just a little, it's not that big a deal. It's just a little foolishness. It's just a little stupidity. It's just a little bad decision. And what he's trying to teach here is no, you think about what's going on in our world, just one ill-timed tweet, right? Or one bad decision. Somebody can build a career for 30 years and just one bad decision. Build a reputation for 20-something years, just one bad decision. And I don't think that's permanent. I think that's one of the things the gospel teaches us. The gospel teaches us that there are second chances, that there's new opportunity, that you can begin again, that you can be forgiven, and you can start over, and there's redemption, and there's resurrection. That's what the gospel teaches us. Wisdom literature teaches us, don't do that. That's stupid. I mean, that's the Hebrew wisdom literature is basically, you need to think of it like an older person sitting and talking to a younger person and trying to tell them, don't do what I did. And you think about those of us that are older in this room, how many of those conversations have you had? Or you've had them in the back of your mind, you're just wishing for your kids, like, I just wish they wouldn't do what I did. Because I did that and it cost me something. And I wish they had a little bit more wisdom to not make the same mistakes that I made. Now, unfortunately, sometimes that's how we gain wisdom, is through experience. Sometimes we gain wisdom through bad experiences. That's a whole other message. We'll have to preach at a later time. But just don't do what I did. So here's the way we avoid that. The way we avoid that is right here. We ask this question. And this is hard to do because a lot of the decisions that we make are not, we don't sit down and write the pros and cons. You know, when we make a bad decision, we're not like sitting down going, well, should I do this or should? A lot of times we don't have time to think like that. It just happens. It just happens. It's a quick decision. But if we could learn to ask this question, what is the wise choice? It would save us from a lot of bad decisions. Now, I stole this question from Todd, our student minister, because I asked him to help me with this message. I went back on Thursday. I came back to the office on Thursday and I was like, how is it that you teach that? What is it you say? I know you talk about wisdom all the time or wise choices. You know, how is it you say that? And he said, what I do is I try to teach students to ask, is it wise, not is it sinful? Is it wise, not is it sinful? He said, I think a lot of times we've been taught to ask, is it sin? And what that does is that kind of encourages us to go right up to the line of sin because we know as long as I don't cross it, I'm okay. But what I'd rather them learn how to do is just to ask, is it wise? Because sometimes is it wise is a much clearer answer and you end up going a lot closer. You know. And when he said the line, I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like that, because I was in youth ministry 20 years ago, back pre-social media, pre-cell phones, pre-internet and all that. You know, I know. And when I was in youth ministry, students would sometimes ask me the question, where's the line? Where's the line? You know what they're asking, right? They're talking about sex. So where's the line? How far can I go and still be okay? Like at what point does it become sin? You know, is the kissing sin or is it, you know, at what point does it become sin? And I remember when I was in youth ministry, I would try to answer that question. So like, well, kids need honest answers. And so I'd sit down and I'd kind of, you know, draw this out like, well, they're this. And I had a little chart where I kind of drew it out. I'm not going to share with you what it says because it's, you know, but I, you know, okay, you can kiss and that's okay. But now when you start touching here, now that's not okay. And I you know, I just got to draw it out. I said, here's the line. There's a line right there. You go any further past that, that's sin. Any further on this side, you're okay. That's the line. And you know what? That was stupid. That was a stupid way to teach that. Do you know why? If I tell you where the line is, what are you going to do? You're going to get just as close to it as you can physically get. Just as close. I mean, if the line's right here, then I'm going to get just right there. I'm okay. It's not sin. I'm perfectly all fine right here. I'm going to get into it. Just a little sin, but I'm going to get just as close as I can to the line without crossing it. It'd be better to ask the question, is it wise? So as I'm approaching the line, rather than asking, is it sin here? Is it sin here? Is it sin here? Todd says, I try to tell people to ask, is that wise? Is it wise to be right here? Is it wise to be right here? Is it wise to be right here? Is that smart? Is that right? And it's a much better, and this is not just about sexual situations, guys. This is about ethic. This is any ethical situation we find ourselves in. This relates to our business dealings. What's the line? How close can I get to cheating my customers before it's wrong? How close can I get to lying to my spouse before it's wrong? How deceptive can I be in what I'm hiding from my boss before it's sin? That's a bad way to look at it. Much better way to look at it is to ask, is it wise? Because here's the problem. Rick, can I borrow you just a minute? Real quick. I will not embarrass you. And if I do, you can beat me up later. My line right here. I want to just you're at the line. This is wrong. That's right. Okay. I want you to just get as close to that line as you possibly can, and just lean over, just as far as you can lean over, as far as you can lean. Keep coming. That's the problem with getting close to the line. I can talk you into crossing it. Anybody over here can talk you into crossing it. And here's the other problem real quick. So just lean over a little bit. Don't cross it this time. Just lean over, and I'm going to help you this time. I'm going to help you. Just take my hand. Come on. That's the other problem. My friends can pull me across the line as well. But here's the biggest problem. One more time. The biggest problem is this. When I'm asking where's the line and not is it wise, my focus is on the line. My focus is over here, not over there. My focus is not on what's right. My focus is on what's wrong. And Solomon would tell us, that's stupid. That's stupid. Let's pray. Father, I want to thank you so much for what you teach us in your word. And it makes so much sense. But we're human beings, and we try to overthink things sometimes. And we think that our ways are better than your ways, or our emotions are powerful, God, and sometimes they just override good common sense and good decision making. So I pray you help us, all of us in this room, help us to make good decisions and help us to make wise decisions and right decisions. Help us to do that by leaning on godly wisdom and not on just our emotions. And it's in your Son's name we pray those things. Amen. All right, we're a little bit over, but that's Scott's fault because he preached some in the sermon.